The presence is the gift. The presence is an awareness of spirit within our being. When we're aware of this gift, we experience an increase in peace, an increase in love, and an increase in joy. And during this holiday season, we celebrate a time of peace, a time of goodwill towards each other. You know, we go to a lot of Christmas parties and we do a lot of fellowshipping, and everybody's in this joyous frame of mind. I went to an event. A dear friend of mine had a Christmas party last night, and I usually don't do things like that when I'm speaking the next day. So if I miss anything, it's only because the party included a wine tasting. And, not to be snobbish, you know how they serve the food, and every section got a little wine to go with it, you know. So it was just a part of the meal, y'all. So I had to do it. But at this party, how it relates to what I'm going to say to you today is, it was truly an international event. And when I say that, there were people of every race, I'm sure every religion. It was just a potpourri of folk at this place. And it was a celebration. Everybody was getting along. And the person giving the party, he made a special point to tell people to meet other people and intermingle with, other folk. Although me and my friends, we were sitting around this table, we had to create our own little colored section. And and we were talking, but in the midst of this celebration, in the midst of all these people getting together from all over the world and enjoying one another, there was a young couple, a young black couple that was, I'll say, new to the neighborhood, that had met my friend, and they came over, the wife came over and started talking to me and a couple of other friends of mine. And they go to, their kids, was what they had in common, they go to this very high-class, expensive school called Harvard Westlake. And she was telling us how her son, who's on the polo team, was getting a little flack because they have, as most schools do, they have a black student union or black whatever, and they have for everybody has a little group, and they have a Jewish group at this for the students. And the kids in the Jewish group were putting pressure on the kids in the black group to take sides or denounce Kanye or Dave Chappelle or anybody that they perceive has said anything negative about the Jewish group. And I thought to myself, I said, this thing is really getting out of hand. Kids can't go to school and just do their work, and it'd be different if he was saying something bad or negative. He ain't bothering nobody, but they're gonna impede upon him that unless you say they're wrong, we got a problem with you. Now here we are in this holiday season, celebrating and enjoying one another. And this young woman, and she wasn't angry or anything, she was just telling us the story. But it resonated with me because I had already prepared this. And one of the things that I wanted to start out with was the fact that, as Reverend Mary pointed out, there's only one power. There's only one presence. And we celebrate it in different ways. And we have different holidays and different things that we do in honor of that presence. As we know, the Jews celebrate Hanukkah, which is a return to the Temple of Jerusalem, which is a return to their presence within, that spiritual center. They celebrate moving from material intellectual thoughts into a spiritual understanding. They burn candles for 8 days because 8 is the number of new birth, the number of a new beginning. And then you have our Muslim brothers. Most of you know my older brother, who's 96 years old and still with us, was the National Secretary for the Nation of Islam for 35 years. So I know a little bit about it. They celebrate Hajj. They celebrate a return to the temple that was built by Abraham and Ishmael. The ability to express faith in the substance, allowing the natural thought to hear God's truth, is what that holiday is all about. The personality is ignored and replaced with the light of spiritual understanding. See, if we could just get these people to ignore the personality and focus on the light of spiritual understanding, we wouldn't have conversations like I had with that young lady. They celebrate a return to Mecca, which is a place free of material and worldly values. And they follow that celebration with something they call Eid, which is when they eat food and gifts and have charity with their family. And then, Reverend Mary, you spoke of it, the Hindu. They celebrate Diwali, which is kind of like their New Year celebration, where they visit family and friends, they exchange gifts, they feast, they put on their best clothes, and they light lanterns symbolizing the beginning of a righteous life. And our Buddhist friends, they celebrate Vesak, Buddha's birthday, the birth of enlightenment. They sing songs. They refrain from harming animals. They live in harmony with one another. They respect all faiths. They distribute cash gifts to the aged, the handicapped, the sick, and they express joy by decorating their homes. Their whole purpose is to live a noble life and develop in their minds the practice of what? Love, kindness, peace, and humanity. And then there's those of us who grew up, like myself, in the Christian faith. We celebrate Christmas, the birth of Jesus, which is the union of a devoted love and an intuitive power of Mary and the great wisdom and imaginative power of Joseph. Together, they produce the spiritual truth of peace and harmony and unity with a divine intellectual indwelling Christ. We decorate our homes with lights and we share gifts of food with our loved ones. We all attempt to stay focused on the real reason for this season. But then comes the noise. What do I mean by noise? I mean the TV. I mean the radio, social media, personal and political and religious rhetoric. All of that noise comes along and disrupts our celebration of the best values and being the best selves that we can be. You see, it's our reactions to this material world that keeps our minds from being stayed on the religious and spiritual concepts that we claim to hold so dear. Not because God is less powerful today than yesterday. It's only because man has made his chosen God. Man has decided to make his political party. We've decided to make our personal desires more important than our spiritual understanding. We have dedicated ourselves and we've decided that our culture, our belief system, dictates the only path to God. Our joy can be displaced by prejudice. Our peace can often be interrupted by fear. Our goodwill is surpassed by distrust. But the only thing that will bring us peace, that will bring us joy, and that will bring us goodwill that we seek is that we accept our spiritual gifts, as we accept and focus on the real reason for the season. When we recognize the greatest gift of all, which is the presence of the one God within us all, this discord will all end. When all faiths recognize the universal sonship in Christendom, we call it the only begotten Son. We call it the Christ child. We call it Jesus the Christ. We can call it all those names and still know it as a universal presence because Christ is what? It's more than just a name. It's a principle. Every religion unifies with the Christ nature. All people realize the living Christ within. No culture, no race, nor class, nor religion can lay exclusive claim on the activity of the one presence. That's what Reverend Mary told you this morning. Nobody can lay claim on that exclusively because it is all of us and it belongs to all of us. You see, the gift we should give ourselves this holiday season is not the name or label that we place on the deity. It's how much that presence is revealed through each and every one of you. That is the only thing that demonstrates your understanding and your kinship with God. By any name, the presence is the gift. Reverend Lisa sent us to chapter 22, and in that text, Ernest Holmes tells us this. He says, the mystical Christ means the universality of sonship embodied in the individual who recognizes this sonship. God is forever begetting the only begotten. You hear what I say? He is forever begetting the only begotten. That passage tells us that the eternal is forever begetting that which is the realization of its own perfection. Those who realize their gifts of the presence within, they understand that the world forms and disintegrates just like this body does, but creation goes on forever. You see, it's an eternal process depicted by the birth, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus. He's the great example because Jesus understood his own nature. He knew that the human embodies the divine that manifests as the Christ nature. He located the kingdom of God where? Within himself. He went beyond the material appearances and found its spiritual cause. You see, it was his knowledge of spiritual law and the power of his mind that produced all those miracles. How did he do it? He located God in his own soul so completely that it was hard to determine where Jesus began and where God left off. That's why you hear Christians proclaiming Jesus is God. You see, when you understand the presence is the gift, you place God in the center of your being. When you know that the presence is the gift, you realize absolute law. When you know that the presence is the gift, you'll find harmony with the spirit of truth. You see, those are the things that place Jesus on another level. We're all capable, but we ain't got there yet. We're working on it. You see, Christ revealed the image and likeness of God. He identified with his Father. He demonstrated the man that spirit conceives, not the material man. He represents the eternal self-knowingness that reveals God's idea as itself. You know, I know it's hard to be human. We're so frail. We make so many mistakes. You know, Reverend Lisa and I were talking about some mistakes that was made recently right here in this church. The difficult thing is that the same relationship Jesus declared is available to you that was available to him. We hear that. We shout hallelujah when we hear that. But do we experience that? You see, to experience it, you must accept the ultimate Christmas gift, the presence of God within you. There you go, Reverend Jerrold, talking about that more like Jesus stuff. But I got a question for you. If you're not seeking spiritual perfection, why are you here? What you doing here? Why are you on Zoom listening to this? Why did you get in your car, even though it was drizzling a little bit, and drive to this location? Why do you listen to Reverend Lisa, Reverend Paul, myself, Dr. Ronnie, Reverend of mine, whoever you tune in on TV? Why do you do it if you're not seeking spiritual perfection? See, the problem is you trying to perfect your human self. And you ain't going to be able to do that. That ain't going to work for you. Ain't going to work. You see, you have to have a spiritual understanding. That's where the work needs to be done. Because when your spirit is full of understanding, when you know your truth, when you know who and what you truly are, then the material stuff, all the incidents, all the ups, all the downs, they all turn into joy for you. Because they know if it's experienced in your life, it's only there for you to get something out of it. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist. Jesus was a way shower in that way because his methods were direct, they were dynamic, they were powerful, but yet they were so simple to comprehend. All you have to do is believe in a God within you. When you believe in God within, guess what that helps you do? It helps you believe in yourself. You see, Jesus had no doubt that the presence is the gift. Now, you know how much this lady loves and cares about all of you. She wouldn't dare to tell you about a gift that was not possible for you to understand or attain. She wouldn't do that. She'd only mention it. She'd only come up with the topic if she knew that the presence was something that you can recognize, that's something that you can realize, that's something that you can take and make a difference in your life. So I want you to stop worrying about if or how long before you fully recognize the gift. A gift that you already possess, by the way. She told you, if you think you can, you will. If you think you can't, you won't. She's told you all you got to do is recognize that those error thoughts that you're having, they can't exist only if you fail to recognize your gift. Those error thinking it can only be there if you fail to recognize your gift. Because if you recognize your gift, if you recognize your truth, then that error thought has no direction for you. You produce heavenly thoughts, and your heavenly thoughts produce what? Heavenly experiences. You can never, ever, ever breach the security of God's love, God's divine understanding, and God's spiritual wisdom. But we must be patient. We should never be doubtful. We should always build our hopes on what? Things that are eternal. There is a universal purse full of spiritual gifts, waiting for us to use them for the greater good of ourselves and the greater good of others. God has already given you the power to do it yourself. But you see, the confusion comes when we're trying to get our human self in line, when the only thing that can help you is your spiritual self. First, the first thing we have to do, and that's what makes this season so important. The first thing we have to do is give birth to the Christ within us. We got to wake up that baby Jesus that's sleeping inside of you. You have to give birth to that Christ child that's within you. That's why Jesus said, I am. Your spiritual self is the way and the truth and the life. We can only know the Father if we embody the nature of the Son. That's why he said, no one comes to the Father except by me. What is the nature that he's referring to? He's referring to sincerity. He's referring to justice. He's referring to love. He's referring to faithfulness. He's referring to full givingness. He's referring to us being fearless and faithful and accepting the eternal spiritual existence that is awaiting us. We all reveal Christ in varying ways, but Jesus is the only one on record that fully embodied the principle of the one God. Jesus, the man, became the embodiment of the Christ. And when he did all those things that the Bible says he did, he wasn't showing out. He wasn't doing it to stand out or to boast. He was doing it to prove your potential. He said, what? These things I do, and even greater things shall you do. So here's the question. How do we get there? What's required to activate the highest level of consciousness within us? How do we activate the greatest Christmas gift, the presence within? How do we do what Mary and Joseph did and accept that there's a special gift where? Inside you. How do you do that? Matthew gives us a little clue. In the first chapter, verse 23, he starts out by saying, behold, a virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel, which is interpreted, get this now, our God is within us. That's what Emmanuel means. Isn't that something? Then he goes on to say, when Joseph rose up from his sleep, he did just as the angel of the Lord commanded him. He took his wife, and he did not know her until she gave birth to her firstborn son, and she called his name Jesus. He goes on to say, when Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judah, in the days of Herod the king, there came Magi from the east. And they were saying, where is this King of the Jews who has been born? For we have seen his star in the east, and we have come to worship him. And then the story goes on to say this. It says, and they entered the house, and they saw the infant boy with Mary, his mother. And they threw themselves down and worshiped him. And they opened their treasures and offered him what? Gifts. These gifts were of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. You see, Herod, he represents that ego, that self-will that's trying to keep this spiritual thing from coming into being. That's why they went to Bethlehem, to make it happen. They went to Bethlehem to make it happen because Bethlehem is a place of spiritual substance. It's a place where we acknowledge our spiritual truth. You see, before you can give birth to the Christ in you, the first thing you have to do is embody the idea of Christ in you. You have to believe that you're capable and willing to do so. Mary and Joseph, two handsome folks, you could see them as that. But what they represent is spiritual enlightenment of the masculine and the feminine coming together. That feminine That feminine is a part of you that's void of polluted and vulgar thoughts. That feminine nature is sincere and is affectionate. That feminine nature is devoted to the preparation for a higher life. Isn't that what Mama did? Prepared you for a higher life. It was Grandma that gave you that unconditional, loving spirit. It was Grandma who nurtured the soul that intuitively accepts that you imagine yourself and that you can become, what did they tell you when you was growing? You can become anything that you want. That's that feminine nature that's within everybody, not just the female species, but everybody. That feminine nature had to come in contact with the masculine. That masculine that proclaims God's increase of high spiritual ideas. That masculine that humbles the ego and humbles the intellectual mind and controls his ego with wisdom and understanding. You see, when all that stuff, it's like making biscuits or cookies or whatever, when it all gets together in the bowl and you stir it up and you bake it just for the right amount of time at the right temperature, oh, that's good, isn't it? Melts in your mouth. You see, this union allows the highest level of consciousness to accept the presence as the gift. Mary weds Joseph. The feminine and the masculine in harmony and balance gives birth to Jesus, the Christ within you. Love and wisdom spiritually wed. Remember it says that they didn't know each other? Y'all read that a long time ago, say he had a baby, they didn't even get down. The book refers to no physical contact. What the book is telling you that there was no material or lustful influences in that relationship. You know how y'all you see something that look good, that's an influence. That directs you in your human self. But your spiritual self does not get influenced by material or lustful influences. But in spite of that being missing, it's not physical, it's all spiritual. Together they sought a place of substance, Bethlehem, to gain the spiritual knowledge and power that they needed to produce this consciousness. A place of comfort was unavailable. So they had to test their faith. They had to give birth to their truth in some meager accommodations. They refer to it as a barn or a manger in the Bible. You see, you can realize your true potential when you're guided to the right place. That's what that Eastern Star was. It was something that was guiding them to that place. And what guided them to that place was the intuitive knowing that they had within. You know what I call that mother wit? Something says, let's go here. Let's not go down that way. You see, and within that place that they found, that intuitive self that they recognized and they allowed to guide them, then emerges those three wise men. Now you say, Reverend Jerrold, what's that all about? Wise man number one, wisdom from the past. Wise man number two, understanding of the present. Wise man number three, faith in the future. That's what reveals your gifts. That gold that they talk about in the Bible, that gold ain't that coin that we spend on them new cars and them new shoes. That gold represents riches and spiritual substance. That frankincense represents a fragrance that's transformational from material to spiritual ideas. And that myrrh represents an herb of an eternal loving spirit. These are the presents that make up the gifts. That's what requires your belief and your acceptance. All of us embody the presence. All of us are a part of this one God, this one Christ. No matter what name you give it, when we realize that we're all one, then and only then will we have peace on earth. Then and only then will there be goodwill to all. Then Sherwood can sing joy to the world. The Lord has come. That Christ consciousness is a universal presence that's inclusive, not separate and exclusive. How we got to this point where everybody got their own idea that they are the one. They and only they know. How are you going to take God and make him exclusive to you? Anybody else that don't think exactly like I think, don't speak like I speak, don't believe what I believe, don't pray like I pray, don't worship as I worship, is going to hell in a handbasket. God bless the preacher who said that today. The teachings of Jesus embodies all faiths. That's why Reverend Mary and I told you, the Hindu, all they're about is offering goodwill to help other people. The Jews, those with a spiritual consciousness, they believe what's hateful to you, you should never do to another. The Muslims stand for safeguarding human welfare and subduing evil. The Buddhists spend all their time practicing virtue and good conduct and morality. And we Christians, we're supposed to what? Love God and love our neighbor and love ourselves. These are the true teachings of all religions. They all teach self-realization and truth and unity with the God within. They all teach in their own way the presence is the gift. What good is it to know about it if you don't accept it? So I'm going to ask you this one question before I leave you. Are you ready? This is the holiday season now. You're expecting a present from somebody. Are you ready to acknowledge your gift? Are you ready to celebrate the true reason for the season, which is the birth of Christ within you? Jesus was, is, and will always be the embodiment of God within. When the preacher tells you to accept Jesus, it is not a religious declaration. It's a spiritual knowing that the presence is the gift. So I want you to give yourself the ultimate Christmas gift. I want you to embody a loving consciousness that eliminates all of your impure thoughts. I want you to embrace the nurturing soul of the intuitive knowing that accepts the seeds of a higher spiritual idea. This Christmas, I want you to give yourself the gift of affirming an unlimited imagination that's always proclaiming your increase. If you don't do anything for somebody else, give yourself this gift. Allow your wisdom and understanding to control your ego and your emotion. Know with the presence within. Know that your prayers and your meditation will allow you to gain spiritual knowledge, thus receiving the ability to use your spiritual power. Have the faith to experience today's discomfort as tomorrow's blessing. I'm going to say that one again. Because you're going to go through something. It ain't going to always be like you think you thought it going to be. But have the faith to experience today's discomfort as tomorrow's what? Blessing. You know it. If there's no test, there's no what? Testimony. if there's no mess, you ain't got no message. And if there's no pain, you don't have no potential. Give birth to the gift that keeps on giving. Have a baby that's rich in spiritual substance. Have a baby that grows to conquer the flesh and provides a pathway to an eternal life. Do like grandma and raise a child with an infinite mind, a divine heart, and an immortal soul. If you allow yourself to stick down deep inside and pull out that gift that's always been present within you, you will allow the presence of God in you to be the gift that you give the world. The presence is the gift. God bless you.